Heyo everybody, Haku here with what stands to be probably a kind of long Tower of God review. Tower of God chapter 368 or season 2 episode 288. It's gonna be pretty long because the other week I said I was like, I have a whole page of notes. That's a lot more than usual. Well, I have like a page and a half of notes because not only did a lot of things happen this week, but in addition to that we were given a freaking ton of information, a bunch of stuff that explains stuff we kind of already knew, but it adds in some new stuff for us to speculate on. So there's a lot not only to go over, but also to discuss what it might mean. So let's go ahead and start going through all of this. At the beginning, Zahard arrives at the Palace of Spears and finds that it is empty. He also says that the reason he's going after them and all of that is because he heard a name that he wasn't supposed to. Of course, Bomb bringing up Arlen. I would assume that from his meeting with the current Zahard or something is how he figured all this out. But he should know, or he does know, that people shouldn't know who Arlen is. So there's all that. And I'm actually kind of glad the Palace of Spears was empty. This is just me personally. Because I think if he just went in there and wiped out Edwan's children, that would have been one thing. That would have been cool to see them fight and all that. But I actually like this because it lets them, it sort of lets them go on to tell more stories. We can learn more about them and their characters can be further developed. And it also sort of protects Bomb's allies that were with them, because that was something I was kind of thinking to myself last week, questioning before this week's chapter came out, as I was like, oh yeah, Bomb has allies that are with Asensio and Macheni at the palace. So what happens if Zahard attacks? What'll happen to them? Could they possibly die? Because I didn't want them to just get killed off and be like, oh well. They see you just being like, oh well, killing off the characters. So I'm glad that they were protected in this way. Zahard tells Huang to keep an eye on Edwan, and we get the confirmation that this is actually going to be considered a new arc, training. Then Huang interrupts Edwan talking about V, because of course we have to get cut off so that we don't get to learn more. And when he brings up, oh, you know my father and all that, none of Bomb's allies are really like, oh my gosh, Bomb, you know your father or anything. So I guess that means Bomb told them his story, told them what he heard from Garam. I don't remember them ever showing that, actually, on panel. So maybe it's just something that happened off screen, so to speak. So yeah, I guess Bomb's allies know about his story. But Huang mentions that there's a champion villain to this stage, just like any other, and defeat the champion villain, and if you do so, that allows you to go to the battleground stage. Bomb then asks about Icarus and Wangnan, what about them? But Huang says, we only kept 2 of your companions and the rest are sent here. So that means I cannot wait for Bomb, Joaquin, and Traveler reunion. Like, not only to see Bomb and Joaquin's reactions to each other again, but also, shouldn't Bomb have some sort of reaction to like, oh my gosh, Traveler, you're that guy that was on the, what was it, that was like, before they got onto Archimedes, way back at the workshop battle. We haven't really had Bomb mention that he had met him before or any of that yet. Or even yet have Andrasi and her reaction to seeing Traveler, his reaction to her, since they saw each other on the Archimedes when he was captured. She isn't the one that released him, though. She just sort of interrogated him and asked what he was all about. The one that released him was Casino. But yeah, then Agro Agnes mentions that he's carrying around 3 people in his lighthouse. I get Andrasi and me saying, not sure about the 3rd, though. I was thinking, did they find Beta and I'm just forgetting it? Because that sounds like something that maybe could have happened toward the end of when they were in the first stage and maybe I just forgot about it. So I went back and reread a chunk of the first stage stuff to see if I did just miss it. And I didn't. I don't think they've met Beta unless I just read through the wrong bit, or the wrong parts. So yeah, no idea. But I'm thinking maybe he's talking about the Snake Charmer, because he was being carried around by Andrasi. Even though I guess he shouldn't totally consider that a different person, since it's just a medallion on her, kind of, that summons him, or that he's within. So it's kind of a weird situation. I think he might be talking about the Snake Charmer. Maybe, if any of you remember, if he's talking about somebody else that I'm forgetting, maybe point out where I'm wrong, because I think I'm missing something. So right now, we know Andrasi and Missang, and I'm assuming he's maybe talking about the Snake Charmer as the third. Then Edwan tells Asensio through the mirror to communicate with him to go after the mirror at the end and to call Icardi, who I had said it in the reaction. I thought that when we first got introduced to Asensio and stuff, he said he was just with his father and two siblings, but I was like, okay, maybe I was wrong, maybe I'm remembering incorrectly, and maybe it is just him and Macheni. But no, it looks like since Icardi's here, I'm assuming there were actually three of them, and it is Icardi, Asensio, and Macheni. Agro Agnes recognizes Asensio as the Spearmaster, showing that he actually grew up and became somebody important in the real world of things too. Edwan tells Yu Han Sung to explain the mirror at the end to Bomb's allies inside, and tells Bomb to come meet him when he's ready to start the training. Then I like Bomb actually asked Agro Agnes. It's confusing. There are so many Kun family characters going on right now that it's confusing to just say Kun. So we asked Agro Agnes if he wants some time alone with Edwan, but Agro Agnes says that he doesn't know what happened, but this Edwan is basically a stranger. And we know that his real father, he had some issues with him, so I assume he wouldn't say that about his current real-world father. So I take that as a hint that we're supposed to believe that means that from the time this Edwan here was to the current time, Edwan has changed a lot, and he's not really the same person, perhaps in a similar vein to what happened to Zahard. Then Boro asks Asensio if the mirror at the end can really defeat Zahard or be used to defeat Zahard, and Asensio says, Zahard might be the strongest data here, but at the end of the day he's just data. He's not the real Zahard or anything. So he says that the mirror at the end, we finally get to know what it is. He says it's the exit back to the outside. Whenever somebody goes through the floor of death, the virtual floor, whenever somebody goes through it, the way to exit and go back into the real world is to use the mirror at the end. But if a data human tries to use the mirror at the end because there's no real life body outside waiting for them, the mirror rejects them and deletes them. So they're planning to use that to delete Zahard because it just deletes data. And that's kind of a way better and easier way to defeat Zahard than actually beating him in battle. So that totally makes sense to use the mirror against him somehow. But Jacques confronts them with the sworn enemies, and I like this. So we're getting Jacques back in this and having him play an actual important part in the story instead of Zahard just coming and wiping them out. We get to have a little bit of a fight and a little extra development and make the characters feel decently important. Macheni stops Jacques' attack really easily though, and then challenges him. Cutting back to what's happening with the training grounds, Kun and Barrow discuss Zahard and Edwan, sort of Barrow just being like, oh my god, that was actually Zahard and Edwan, how are we supposed to deal with them? Leading to Kun thinking, how are we supposed to deal with them? And thinking about sort of why Edwan would make this bet with Zahard to begin with. Because it is Zahard. But then we go to see Bomb actually training with Edwan, and Bomb, the first thing he does is ask him about V, ask him about his father. And we actually get information on V. No cutoffs, no, I'll tell you later, we get some information. Edwan says that he would have chosen V to be king out of any of them, but Zahard was definitely still the leader of their group, but as a king it should have been V. He says that V was interested in the natives of the tower, the people that actually lived there, but the others, as they climbed, became less interested in the people of the tower and just sort of became more interested in themselves. He says that as V kept getting closer to the normal people, Zahard kept becoming different and changing from who he originally was, presumably meaning the opposite happened, because he said they were kind of like opposites, that Zahard, as we've seen, became less and less interested and kind to the normal people. He says that Arlen would always try to keep peace between them, and that Edwan learned from Yu Han Sung that V had died and that Zahard had become king, because of course this is just Edwan's data from when he was on the Hell Train, so a lot has changed. So even he says he doesn't know how it happened or what happened, but somehow V died, somehow Zahard became king. And he mentions that Yuan Sung came to him to ask him to help him defeat Zahard, and also mentioned that V's son was going to be coming here, and that's why they needed to make the way for him. So this tells me Yuan Sung knows a lot. We don't know how yet Yuan Sung knows all of this, but given that he works with FUG, I think it's safe to say that, like I said, I'm full team FUG right now. I think that sort of shows us that he probably learned it from Grace Merche Luslek, who seems to be leading FUG in kind of a revenge mission for what happened to Arlen, and V as well. So Yuan Sung asked him to defeat Zahard and all that, but Edwan says that he didn't honestly believe all of the stuff that Yuan Sung was saying at first, but promised him that he would help just in case. And then he says, you know, Bam, I'll tell you about V bit by bit, but we have a month. We need to start this training. So Edwan shows off electricity in his Shinsu and says that electricity is his Shinsu quality, and that different individuals have different Shinsu qualities, and it's a special thing that they add to train. And he mentions that he right now on the Hell Train has 3 Shinsu qualities, which means that the current him after all this time could have developed many more, or even more. But he says that the electricity is his first quality, assuming that to be the one that's just most connected with him, even though he was able to learn others after it. But he mentions this isn't normal for everybody to be able to learn a bunch of different Shinsu qualities, that his ability to manifest qualities was special, even among the 13 warriors. So he then mentions that there's actually, and I think this is really cool too, not only quality is a really cool thing, I'm glad we're getting not just elements, because we've seen that, but an explanation of how there are elements and why Shinsu can take on elements and stuff. I like that we're getting an explanation of why and giving it some structure, but he mentions that there's 2 types of quality, or ways to use quality, and it's quality manifested and internal quality. And quality manifested, I guess from the way he describes it, it's sort of like elemental control, and I would assume that means not only is it like the lightning that Edwan controls, it's probably similar, it's probably what's used by Yeon to control flames, the same for Quietro to control flames, and Lulu, because remember Lulu back on the Name Hunt Station could control water. So I would say that just basic elemental Shinsu summoning and use would be quality manifested. And then for internal quality, Bomb brings up, oh, it's like Ron's lightning pill. So we learned that that's sort of like Ron's lightning pill, and I would assume too, to give more examples of it, I would think that that's sort of like Lero Ro's electrical, what was it, the reinforcement, where he could reinforce his body and weapons with electricity, or Akka's combustion, where I would assume that's sort of like a fire quality, internal quality. So it's sort of like, because remember his ability was to make heat from his body so hot that any attack that came near him would just burn up before it reached his actual body. So I would assume that Akka's power was internal quality too. And then when Bomb brings up Ron's lightning pill, Edwan says that lightning pill is a simple and effective form of that, but it's really dangerous, so it's not a good thing to learn to use. Bomb then thinks to himself, trying to figure out what Zahard's quality was. He said that there was something weird about Zahard's power in the Shinwan Ryu. He thought maybe it was like a, and I'm just going to call it Shinwan Ryu instead of Black Hole Sphere, I guess. At least for now, because what was the Divine Circular Flow is what it should be. But he basically said, you know, is it a Shinwan Ryu internal quality? Bomb just trying to think and coming up with nothing in the end, but noting to himself that his power was odd. But continuing more into Edwan's explanation, he says that the quality that matches you is both easier to control than usual, just normal basic Shinsu, it's easier to control, and it's more powerful and densely packed, or at least more easy to make powerful and densely packed if it's the quality that matches you, like lightning matches him. So he brings up tension, and I would assume that is Su from the whole Bong, Su, and what's the other one, like Myung or something, which was the size of the Bong. So he mentions that what tension is that it increases the power and the density of the Shinsu within a bong without actually increasing the number of bongs or the size of the bong. So I would assume that's Su that we already heard of from way back in the first volume even, I think, is when we first were introduced to those concepts. So he says Eurasia was obviously the best wave controller, but that V could pack the most tension into a single bong. So he presumes then that since Bomb is V's son, that it's easy to make the assumption that working on tension would be the fastest way to get him stronger in general within a month. Now I absolutely love this, because, just cutting in here, because instead of Bomb just getting a random extra power thrown on, we're getting an explanation of quality, and that's a natural progression for Bomb to learn some sort of element to a Shinsu, which I think is going to be great. But also, we have these basic concepts like packing more into each single shot, and we've seen Bomb increase his number of bongs throughout the series, where everybody was always amazed at how many he could control, but now we're actually getting somebody to come in and train him and say, it's not all about making a bunch of bongs of Shinsu, you need to put more power into each one. So I like that this is actual training to not give him a new skill, but to make the skills he already has stronger. And he even mentions to him, he says, forget about using Shinwan Ryu, just use normal Shinsu for right now, and save Shinwan Ryu for after you both do two things. Find a quality that matches you, so again, that'll be easier for Bomb to control, and easier for Bomb to make more powerful, and to improve his tension. So once he's improved his tension, once he's found a quality, then he can worry about adding that onto Shinwan Ryu, but for now, stick to the normal stuff. Edwan then makes a spear out of Shinsu and says that Bomb's first test in this training is to sculpt the Shinsu into that shape. And I'm assuming this is good for tension training, because in order to sculpt Shinsu into a certain shape, I would assume that means you need to put more pressure on certain parts, less pressure on other parts, in order to make it a shape, and that should mean that different parts of it require different tension, and it'll generally make his tension control a lot better. So at least that's what I'm assuming this training it does, and why I'm assuming it makes his tension better. Then the end of the chapter, Jock orders Viol's data to the Data Viol to attack Macheni, but Data Viol refuses. He says, that's not even the person I'm not even her sworn enemy. But then Asensio decides to take Macheni's place and stay back to fight Jock and maybe the sworn enemies too, and tells Macheni and the others to keep moving on ahead. And then let me flip the page, because that was it for the chapter, but we also have to talk about the blog and some general thoughts. Sorry, hope that wasn't too loud. Probably should have just done a jump cut there, but who cares. Either way, for the blog post, some things that CU said that I thought were kind of important. He says that he derives a lot of the character names from footballers, which we already knew, but he says the names generally don't have any connection to the character themselves. He mentions that Bomb and his companions should be upgraded as rivals of the 10 household heads, which makes sense, and we're seeing right now that, sort of compared to Bomb's teammates, the 10 family heads are overwhelmingly powerful, but I feel like what CU's saying is good, where Bomb and his team should sort of progress along this character arc where they're getting stronger in a way that makes it seem like, to me, I think they should seem weaker than the 10 family heads, which will make it seem more satisfying when they actually beat them in the end. But I think it should, it should be that slow build, but they should also be kind of seen as rivals in their way through the tower and what they change and do. So I like the way CU's looking at that and writing it. And we already see it with Bomb, possibly, even though he's overpowered by Zahard right now. But look at some of his other companions, or possible future companions, that could be considered as sort of, I don't know how to put it, I guess rivals to 10 family heads. Anak and Andrasi are both super strong and have some of Zahard's power within them. Wangnin is a very special case here. Kunaguro Agnes, obvious important main character. Rak is been used as a comedy character a lot lately, but I feel like he hides a lot more than what we've seen of him. If Joaquin does end up somewhere along the line joining up with Bomb, Joaquin's incredibly strong and definitely has the sort of rivalry or will to surpass REA Hone that Kun Agro Agnes does for Kun Edwan. Ron is also incredibly strong, but I don't really know where he fits into that so much. And then, of course, we have people like Hatsu and Shiplisu, or, yeah, Shibisu, I guess is what Line calls him, that are important friends to Bomb, but I don't really know where they fit in on that whole power level gap. And then, of course, people like Sachi are strong, but who knows if Sachi or Boro are going to be all the way to the end of the tower with Bomb, or if they'll drop off somewhere along the way. What was another really strong one I was just thinking of? Oh, I guess he's not super strong, but Haku I really see as a character that'll probably travel with Bomb to the end of the tower, or at least close up there, because Siu put a lot of time into developing Haku's character and spent a lot of time building a relationship between Haku and Bomb. So I do think Haku's probably one of those that'll last a while. But you see Bomb has those really key important allies that you can see you'll probably make it to the end of the tower with them. That's the way I look at Andrasi, Anak, Kun Agro Agnes, Rak, and I kind of look at Haku that way now, and I feel like possibly Hatsu and Ship, and then I'd throw possibly Ron in there, possibly Novik as well, and if maybe Joaquin joins them, possibly that, and that would be 10 there. I know that kind of leaves out Beta, but Beta's a weird case right now. He's kind of just the assistant to Kun at the moment, even though he himself is strong. So Beta's kind of in a weird place at the moment. But yeah, I got off on a tangent there, but just talking about that. Then next up, he mentions that Siu says he feels like the emotional growth in other shonens doesn't really fit Tower of God that well, and that's one thing. I know he's the author and all, but a fan who's been with it many years, I disagree with that, because I feel like that's the one thing that Tower of God is missing sometimes, is that emotional connection for characters. Like, we get the fighting, we get the great art, we get the character progress when it comes to strength and abilities, which is what Siu brings up that he thinks fits Tower of God better. But I think the emotional growth, we need a little bit more of that. It's sort of the one lacking aspect of Tower of God a lot of times, is that Bomb's mental and emotional growth doesn't always keep up with the abilities that he's gaining growth. So that sort of falls behind sometimes. And then lastly, Siu says that we will get to see Asensio and Misheni's powers at some point here in this arc. And says that he actually heard about a fan cafe meetup and went to it. So that was nice that he took time to do that. But yeah, some thoughts I had in general here. I love that Bomb is improving his skills, like I said, rather than getting more powers thrown on him, more abilities. He's improving the skills he already has, which I think is important, because if we keep adding on powers, you think over time, Bomb adds in these new powers, the older things become less important. I mean, just look at how less people are thinking about the Thorn and stuff after learning about Shinsu Black Hole Sphere, and Shinsu Black Hole Sphere being so important to the past few arcs. It has made the Thorn's still important, but there are times where it's made it feel less important because we focused on something else more. And then older things he's learned being used less and less. So I think rather than throw more stuff on him, take the stuff he already has, the blue ore, the close range, the close range style that he learned from Ha Jinsung, the long range style he learned from Yu Han Sung, take the stuff that he learned like on the train, like the Shinsu sword that I think was kind of maybe a one-time thing. Don't remember if he's ever used that a second time. Or the ability to move Shinsu in the way that Daniel moved it, or his Shinwan Ryu, even, the Black Hole Sphere. So take all that, just improve it, make all of that better. Then anything more? I like that we're actually learning about quality as a new concept. I think it's really good because, like I said, it explains what elements are. We've seen a bunch of elemental Shinsu, but now we actually kind of get what elemental Shinsu is explained to us. So I think that's really important. As for Bomb's quality, his element, what he'll get, I was thinking, because somebody brought it up in the comments, I was thinking either maybe it's either going to be something that's similar to Zahard's, whatever was weird about Zahard's, so that Bomb and Zahard can continue to be sort of like parallel rivals in a way, or it could be something that's similar to what V's is, possibly something that's a natural counter to Zahard's, or it's a natural opposite to what Zahard's is. So I'm thinking Bomb's might either be light or darkness, something like that, or it could be, because I don't think they're necessarily just common elements, it could be something like absorption, like how the Shinsu black hole sphere sucks stuff in, or it could maybe even be something like propagation, where he takes like a single bit of Shinsu and his Shinsu exponentially grows when he releases it. So it could be something like absorption or propagation. So if Zahard's is one of those, Bomb's could be the opposite of that. So I'm thinking maybe something like that would make sense for what Bomb's quality is. I'm also really waiting for a Bomb and Joaquin meeting, and also how Edwan will react to all of it, because we didn't really see Edwan react much to Agaro Agnes being, his direct son, or even Irure being related to the Eurasias. But either way, I thought it was really cool that just in this arc we haven't really seen much of reactions from Edwan or from Zahard, but just from Bomb's group joining and entering right now, and Rachel's group surrounding Bomb's group, right now on the floor, they have just received the son of V, the son of Arie Hone, the son of Kun Edwan, and the son of Zahard, being Wangnan. All of them are now just thrown in there on the floor. So I think that was a cool sort of how those parallel to the 13 Warriors. Also, we still don't know, some foreshadowing that I still thought was good and that made me think about, we still don't know what that carving that looked like Rak was all about. I know it's foreshadowing for something in the future, but I think it's cool that it's still something that we should keep in mind, and we still don't know what it's about. So yeah, thoughts as a whole, there was so much content here. I'm glad Zahard didn't kill Edwan's children, because like I said, now we can tell more stories with them. So that's it. I enjoyed it a ton. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm giving it 9.5 qualities out of 10. There was a ton of information, but I don't think it was emotionally or historically important enough in the course of the series to give it a 10. Though maybe it deserved it even. So 30-minute review. This will probably be up Wednesday because I'm recording it way too late Tuesday night to actually get it finished in time. So sorry about that. This will probably not be up until tomorrow on Wednesday. So 9.5 qualities out of 10. Hope you enjoyed the video. Like if you did like it. Comment down there. Tell me what you thought about this chapter, what you thought of my thoughts on it. All these things I brought up and mentioned. There was so much to talk about. Subscribe for more. Tower of God, much more on the channel. So yeah, I just said subscribe. Follow on Twitter if you want. I'll try to keep you updated there and stuff for the channel, or we could talk there. If you want a link to our Discord server to talk with me and even more of us there about Tower of God and about other things, then yeah, just ask and I can give you a link to the Discord. That's it. Thank you once again for watching, and I'll see you all next time.